Worse than the European Commission's politicking is its double standard and its prioritization of Ukraine's interests over those of EU member states. For 2 months now, ladies and gentlemen, Russian oil has not been flowing to us through the Druzhba pipeline. The Ukrainian president stopped the flow, claiming the pipeline was damaged. To this day, let me repeat, to this day, no one has been allowed to access the alleged site of the damage to verify its extent, if any, or to offer our own technical capacities and European funding for its repair. On the contrary, we are hearing statements from the Ukrainian president that he has no interest in restoring the transit of Russian oil after halting gas transit. This is the second open, hostile, and economically harmful step taken by Zelensky against Slovakia. The European Commission has done nothing to compel the Ukrainian president to change course. In fact, it supports him with statements that Ukraine will receive a $90 billion military loan, regardless of the halt in oil or gas transit. Slovakia has been forced to declare a state of oil emergency and to release its strategic reserves so that the Slovnaft refinery can continue producing fuel. Shortly afterwards, to protect our domestic market, we decided that foreigners would pay more for diesel and that there would be limits on large-volume refueling. And the European Commission, ladies and gentlemen, within just 2 days, sent us a threatening letter warning us of all sorts of consequences. It is striking that the Commission does not use the same language when addressing Zelensky. Those are letters full of understanding and sympathy. What does it matter that Zelensky is causing harm wherever he can? If the European Commission continues to behave in this way and prioritize Ukraine over Slovakia, it must forget about our support for the 20th sanctions package against the Russian Federation, or our willingness to facilitate Ukraine's rapid accession to the Union. Without meeting the necessary requirements, including the restoration of the Druzhba pipeline. This is not just about Slovakia and Hungary, but about all of Central Europe. We would not be facing high fuel prices if it were not for this situation. Once again, hatred and obsession with Russia prevail. We are harming ourselves, making our own people pay more for petrol and diesel, and exposing them to shortages of these commodities instead of purchasing gas and oil from Russia. Someone here has gone mad. And it is not the government politicians in Slovakia or Hungary. Ladies and gentlemen, if the European Commission proceeds with its threats against us for protecting our domestic fuel market, we will have to respond. The Commission is effectively expecting us to accept petrol and diesel prices above $2 per liter. I have no doubt that it is also pursuing political objectives, namely weakening the current governing coalition, which dares to take sovereign positions. The Commission would clearly prefer an opposition government, which would fulfill all its wishes. Perhaps they would even drag Slovakia into war. They would not dare to veto mandatory migration quotas, file a lawsuit with the European Court over the decision to halt Russian gas supplies, or oppose EU summit conclusions on Ukraine or sanctions packages.